Well, it's time to put the headliner in the 68 Charger, so I've laying it inside the car right now. I've got the interior all removed, front seats and the rear seat, just to make it easier to get around, and wanted to provide a quick update on what's happening here. So what I've already done, if I can get out enough, is I've put a little bit of insulation up into the ceiling. You can also use the factory jute or batting insulation as well, but I just went ahead and used what we had on hand, and it is got a foil layer on the side that is now glued to the roof. Couple of benefits here. One will be just a slight sound deadening, and then with this interior that's going to be black, it'll get pretty hot here in the summer times. So the insulation here will also help repel some of the heat when the sun's beating down on that metal roof. So so I've got the I've got the insulation in here, and just now finished gluing in the cell panel boards, one on each side. This is a little bit different for me. Again, I do mostly GM stuff, but this is a little different. The GM cell panels usually have the fabric on them already, and then they go in after the headliner's in. This is a little bit different on this Charger. The whole headliner will go in, and then the fabric from the headliner will then now stretch down to the bottom, and it'll attach down here in the package tray area. So I'll be working on that and slowly getting this in. This is just simply glued in with an adhesive, and then there are also these studs that punch through the hole. And I don't know why the hole in the cardboard is here. Maybe for a 69 or 70 Charger they changed it, so I had to put a hole in it here. Unfortunately, the hole was a little too large and the stud would not bite down on it, so I just put a flat washer in there and then drove it in to get it to stay. So you can see here on this side, this one is actually how it should look. And then it is glued at the bottom here, again with some adhesive, and then I go ahead and glue kind of along this edge a little bit and along this edge just to give it a little bit extra reinforcement. One thing I do want to say about the adhesive I'm using is I'm using this Weldwood Contact Cement, and I just brush it on. Put a little bit on each of the two surfaces that you want to bond, and let it sit for a little while, and then you get an instant bond when you put the two surfaces together. What's important here, and this is why I'm using this, if I can get it to focus in, is the high heat resistance. Too many guys are putting these headliners in with the spray bomb adhesive, and yes, there are some that are made for headliner installation, but very few of them, especially some of the cheaper ones, are not what I would refer high heat resistance. And as you can imagine, with this headliner in here and being in the sun, you're going to have this thing exposed to some pretty high temperatures. So the last thing that we want to do is to have this thing come out, or the glue start to soften up in the heat and it start to sag, get wrinkles in it, and just get a little sloppy. So what I like to do is use this material here. You can pick it up just at Home Depot or wherever. And again, it's just that Weldwood Contact Cement. But the important thing here is the high heat resistance. So I've got the headliner. I've let it sit out in the sun for I don't know, an hour or two, and we're gonna start putting it in. I've got the bows already inserted into it, and we can pick up the video here in a little bit when we get ready to do the install. Before I go and hang the headliner in the car, I just wanted to show how these bows are inserted into the listings. So when I remove the original headliner, I made sure to keep track of the order of the bows, and so you can see here that the factory has already labeled front on this headliner. So I know that that's towards the front, and then obviously this is going to be the back. Even if they wouldn't have put front on it, it would have been easy to tell, because here are the little flaps that cover the cell panels, as I had mentioned earlier. So But what's important here is that each of these bows are a different size, and the front to the rear, they increase in size, and so it's pretty easy not to get the first couple confused with the last couple. But if you start to get into the middle here, the transition in sizes is just a little bit different. So it's really important to keep those labeled correctly. So I just simply laid the headliner out flat. I've got it on my workbench right now, but I did lay it out flat and inserted the bows into each of the listings. And you also notice here is I basically center the bow on the headliner, and then I cut the listing anywhere from 3 to 5 inches inboard, and then slide the bow into that. The reason for this is that you don't want it to start puckering up at the edges of the headliner, and keep in mind that there is extra on this headliner so that we can stretch it, wrap it, glue it, and then get it tacked into place. So eventually we may see that we're going to cut some of this off of here. So we can make additional adjustments as we hang it, and we notice whether or not it's puckering up or wrinkling. We can cut these listings and slice them to move the bows and get the perfect fit. So I just wanted to show that real quick. We're going to go ahead and hang this in the car, and what I'll do is I will start by just hanging it in the center inside the car. That'll make it easy to handle, and then we'll start getting the bows all pushed in and in place from the front to the back. Before I get too far, I wanted to show something that is pretty critical. I originally thought that I'd just come in here and hang the headliner from the middle first, just to get it to where it was easier to handle, and basically hang it in the middle first, and then kind of just put all the other ones in the bows. And what I found is that unlike a lot of the cars I'm used to working on, where there's a hole here and locks everything into place, there's actually these clips where the headliner bow goes into. So it doesn't really hold it in place, and so they just, because they're tension fit, they just keep wanting to spin on me, and they fall out. So what I've discovered and realized here is that there's actually a tensioner wire back here, and so this little wire goes into the back of the roof frame, and then it comes out and it has a little bit of a hook on here. And so if I put the last headliner bow in and then put this in such that it grabs a hold of that bow, it'll actually keep it from spinning and falling out. And so I'll be able to keep some tension on it towards the front of the car to put the other headliner bows in. And so you can see here, I think this is the last headliner bow. So this would actually go up here, if I can show you without losing the light, and then it's going to come in there, and it'll literally just hook in and hold it into place. And then I'll be able to put the other ones in without any issue. So I'll keep my fingers crossed, and we'll give it a shot and see what happens. All right, headliner is in. Roughed in anyway. It's not done, obviously, but got all the bows in. Got the little tiny hole cut there for the dome light socket, and we're going to start stretching the back. As I'd mentioned earlier, the back has the tensioners that go up on the very last bow, and so the goal here is to try to keep pulling it forward to keep tension on those rear bows, and then get all the way to the front. And then I've just got it wrapped up around here into this tack spike to hold it in here. And now what we'll do is we'll start stretching a little at a time and get it nice and tight here, and then we'll go to the back and start stretching back there, and then we'll finish up with the side. So what I typically do here is I'll get it tacked down in the center, and that'll be both with the tack strip and with the adhesive. I haven't done it here yet, but it'll be right up in this area, and get it pulled nice and tight, and then I'll work my way to the edge here, to the A-pillar right here, and then we'll stretch the side. So I'll come back and provide an update of how things looks once we get the front and the rear tightened up. Well, I got the headliner tacked in place right now. I don't have any adhesive in it right now, but I've just stretched it from front to rear to get it nice and tight between the bows. You can see here that I've got it stretched, and then I'm just using the claws there to hold it into place. And it's fairly nice and taut. You can see here that there are some wrinkles. It's nothing to freak out about. Those are side-to-side wrinkles. So once we come over and pull the sides tight, that should tighten up those wrinkles that we see here. So that's the front. I don't know if the lighting will be very good in the back. I got the shop door open, but you can see here that I've stretched it out, and I've got it hooked into the claws. It's hard to see. And then you can see here in the cell panel area. And again, I'm not too worried about any of these wrinkles yet. And the nice thing about the contact adhesive is it does give you some time to work with it. So let's see if we can go out here and see if we can see. You can't really tell, but you can see here the tacks. I've got it pulled over some of the tacks just to kind of keep it in place. So yeah, we're going to try to glue the front end here, and then we'll glue this back in. We're just going to use a small amount of glue. I don't know if you can see up in there, but we're just going to put a little bit of glue, about an inch swatch, and then we'll do the same thing on the headliner. The one thing we want to be careful about is, since this is a perforated headliner, here you can see the light coming through, is when we put our adhesive on there, since I'm brushing it on, I want to be careful not to put so much on that it starts to seep out of the perforations. The other thing that I'll try to do is I'll try to make sure that I just keep it on the area that will be covered by the trim, and that way if anything does seep out, it's covered. So that's the one disadvantage to brushing it on. You just got to be careful. If I was spraying it on, it wouldn't seep through at all. Okay, so I've got the headliner stretched in and actually glued now in the front and the back. And again, it's difficult to see, but you can see here that I've got it stretched nicely, and it is tucked around the tack strip, and then it is glued as well. I ran a bead of glue down the edge of that. You can see here where it's kind of sucked down where the glue is holding the headliner in place. And then I got the front in as well, and the lighting's not the greatest in here, but you can see here that I've got the front of the headliner tucked up underneath, and these spots here that you see, those are the clips for the trim. The trim will go up against the glass here and the headliner, and then they'll screw into those. Normally you do this with the glass out of the car, and then you would actually take those out, and then you'd put the headliner in, wrap it around like I have here, and then the clips would then go in. They're screwed into the window channel, and then they also serve to hold the headliner in place as well. But since the glass is already in this car, we're doing this obviously with the glass in. I will admit it was a bit of a challenge, but not nearly as bad as I expected it to be. I thought I was going to run into some challenges here getting this stretched. So now what I'll do is I'll work on the sides. We've got the sides now to do, and we'll get those pulled nice and tight from both sides. You can see here that there's still quite a few wrinkles, but those are going to come out. Those are definitely going to come out when we stretch it side to side. And it should look pretty good. And then we'll do the cell panel ear muff section last, and get everything pulled nice and tight. One of the things that I have, you can use a putty knife as well, but I've got this nice little headliner tool, and so what I'm able to do is come up in here and then push it in and get it tucked up in there nice and tight. And then when it's all said and done, we'll come around and we'll trim this headliner up. I've already started to trim it there. We'll trim it even closer as we get closer to being done, and then it'll be real nice install. So we'll come back when we get the headliner all in place, and hopefully the next thing that we see here is the completed installed headliner. Got the headliner all installed now, and I just wanted to show here what we've got going on. So I haven't trimmed the headliner yet, but you can see here that I've got the headliner stretched and there is excess hanging down. And one of the things that I do that's pretty helpful is I cut these little slits or these little reliefs here in each of the different sections here between the bows. You can leave it all as one section and stretch it, but what I found as we start to get on this arch towards the back of the car, if you slit these and cut them up into smaller sections, you can stretch them and get the headliner to shape the way that you want to. So that's the way that I like to do it. It's a pretty common way to do that. So what we'll do here now is we'll come in and we'll trim the excess off, and then I'll actually wrap it up around inside of there. And right here in this groove here is where the headliner trim will go. So the adhesive should hold it. Again, I use that high temp adhesive, but the headliner trim will certainly help reinforce that bond there. I haven't done the sails yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get all of this trimmed out, and then I'll come back here and tackle the sail boards. A little bit different than what I'm used to doing with the GM cars, where the headliner just goes to the sail panel and then the sail panel separate. So we'll get it all figured out here. Got a hole here for the dome light, and then you can see here that it's stretched out pretty good. There's just a few little wrinkles here. I'll take a heat gun to those later, and then just over the course of time, the headliner should smooth out a little bit. It needs to continue to be in here, be stretched, and then get warmed up, and eventually those wrinkles will come out. This wrinkle here, I could actually probably come in here and stretch just a little bit more to get that out. So now you can see here where I've stretched just a little bit, it's helped a little. I probably need to pull it off the glue a little bit. There we go. And then it's still coming back. Probably need to do it with two hands. But a couple other things here. I did leave the screws in, so right here you can see there's a screw there. That's for the coat hanger, the hanger there. And then I also did the same thing up in the front. You can't see with the lighting, but I did the same thing up in the front for the visors. So we'll get this trimmed, and then we'll get started on the sail panels, and hopefully we'll have this headliner all finished up. Wrapping up the headliner today, and just wanted to provide a quick update. I've got the headliner in now, all stretched out. The headliner trim on both sides are in place. The visors are now in. At some point the visors will need to be replaced on this car. These are in fairly rough shape. I think they'll serve their purpose temporarily, but I'll get this car back to its rightful owner, and then they'll probably at some point focus on the interior restoration, minus the headliner, because that's certainly going to be done. But you can see here, all the way back, cell panels are looking good. There are just a few wrinkles, and that's what I'm going to work on right now. I just wanted to show a quick clip of what's going on here, if we can get kind of a before and after. So you can see here that there are just a few wrinkles left after stretching and getting everything put back together. So what I'll do is I'm just going to take my heat gun, be very careful when I do this, but I'm going to just apply a little bit of heat to get it to stretch out some more, and that should hopefully take out the remaining wrinkles here. The other thing that's going to happen over time is as the car sits, we're going to see some improvement in some of these wrinkles and pucker areas. The headliner will just eventually kind of take the shape that it needs to. But what I really wanted to do here is just kind of show a before of the wrinkles that I'm going to work on now with the heat gun. And I'll come back here and and show what it looks like after I've done a little bit of work on it. Just wanted to show a final clip of the headliner now that I've got it completely installed, and just finished using the heat gun to remove some of the wrinkles and puckers. There weren't very many in this particular headliner. I had pretty good luck getting it stretched out and glued into place. Got the headliner trim on the front and sides in, and it actually looked pretty good after just the install. But there were a couple of wrinkles that I showed earlier up in this area along these listing seams, and you can see now that they're completely gone. They've been removed, and that was pretty simple. I just used my heat gun on a low setting and just very carefully heated up the fabric, or the vinyl in this case, until those wrinkles were removed. Want to be really careful when using that heat gun. You don't want to start burning through your headliner fabric. So just thought I would show this just real quick to how clean it turned out. Again, if you see wrinkles after you get the headliner stretched in place, don't panic. Go ahead and use some heat to get those stretched out, and everything should work out pretty good. And I'll try to get turned around here in the back, and you can see the cell panels have even turned out real nice in this area. The one thing I will mention is down in these corners of the rear window, there's still a little bit of extra fabric that I can't get pulled quite tight enough and stay in place. What's important to know here is that this does not currently have the correct headliner trim around the back glass here. This is actually windlace. It is not the correct trim. The correct trim is metal, and it is about 2 inches wide, and it's basically 4 pieces, I believe. There's a large piece that goes around the back of the glass here and comes down into the corners. There are then 2 corner pieces that go in each of the corners here that hold that headliner in place, and then there's a larger piece that goes along the back of the glass here. It will hold down the back end of the rear of the package tray here and hold it into place. So there's really nothing that I can do at this point unless I get my hands on the correct trim, but I will go ahead and let the owner deal with that particular part of the headliner install. What'll be important here, and I'll be sure to inform them, is that if they do decide to get the correct headliner trim, when they get down here to these corner pieces, that headliner will just need to be pulled up from the adhesive a little bit and then stretched and then tucked in around the tack strip, and then that headliner corner can then be put in, and it'll hold it into place, and then it'll look really sharp. I tried to get it down inside of at least the strip there, but there's only one tack on that strip. That as it goes around the corner of that radius of that back window, there aren't any tacks or claws in the strip, and so there's really not a good way to get it to stay in place until that headliner trim is there. So that's something that we can take care of at a later date, and it will look perfectly fine once the correct headliner trim is put in there. Those wrinkles will come right out. So anyway, just thought I would show that should do it now for the headliner install. And it's a lot of work, but if a person's patient and takes their time, definitely pays attention to what they're doing, these can be put in relatively simple. I honestly don't know if there's really a reason to hire an upholstery shop to do something like this. It's pretty basic to do. It may take a couple of different times to really get to where you've perfected it, but even on a first-timer's very first headliner install, it's usually pretty straightforward. I would recommend maybe calling up a buddy that's done it before and have them kind of walk you through it, and even provide an extra set of hands to help out. So we got a dome light lens coming, and I'll get that put into that dome light just to kind of finish that off. And then again, if the owner wants to put a new bezel in that's a little shinier, they can certainly do that. So anyway, the headliner is in, and we are all finished with the interior.